Is anybody actually noticing what is actually going on with this Jonathan Majors trial? Because it's absolutely diabolical. It's disgusting, quite frankly. I can't even believe that this is legally allowed in a court of law. So let's talk about it. First of all, they're suppressing evidence. So the courts have actually agreed not to allow the 6 or 7 women who can confirm that Jonathan Majors was abusive to them in a relationship as well to testify. Apparently, this is not relevant to the case. They will, however, allow her being arrested for hitting him to be known to the courts. Even though there were no charges, they're going to allow the jury to know that without allowing them to know his history of abuse. Clearly, they're trying to make it look as though she was the aggressor in the situation. Now, I couldn't go back and verify the actual source of this information, so we're going to put a question mark next to the 6 or 7 women being kept out of evidence. But if it is true, it's giving Johnny Depp and Amber Heard all over again. And for those of you who want to argue the toss about him in being innocent, I have no interest in that. The details are on my channel. I've done whole videos about it. The guy is not innocent, okay? Jonathan Majors is literally using the same strategy as Johnny Depp used in that trial. Suppressing evidence, number one. What is it the guy said in that documentary, Depp versus Heard? Let's play it.
The thing is about justice is that it's not about the truth. It's not about right or wrong. Unfortunately, it's about what the judge or jury believes. And on the information that's presented. And that's why trials are theater. It's supposed to be the search for the truth, but it's really about us orchestrating what witnesses we're going to bring in, the order of proof that we're going to present this story, and how we're going to do it, what we're going to keep in, what we're going to keep out.
How is this even legal? They're just going to just delete information because it's incriminating to the person being accused. It's incriminating because that is the situation at hand, because he's not a good person. You can't just suppress that. That shouldn't be allowed, but this is what's going on. And this being suppressed is allowing his team to paint a picture of her being the aggressor in the situation. It's allowing that to actually take place. So what he's saying about it being theater is absolutely correct. And it's not just theater in the courtroom, it's also outside of the courtroom. Because if you notice, there are now pictures of Jonathan Majors and Meagan Good in New York in like marital bliss without the ring, quite frankly. And this is all done to portray that Jonathan Majors is not a threat to women and is actually a good guy. Right? That is the whole point of it. Now, Jonathan Majors is using that tactic in a blatant way, whereas Johnny Depp's team was much more subtle about it. All they did was imply that there was something going on between Johnny Depp and the female lawyer in his team. They did that all the way through until they won. And then lo and behold, we find out that she was in a full-blown relationship with someone else, which they didn't feel like they should share during the trial. Isn't that interesting? It's the same thing, just done more subtly. So yeah, it's theater, it's manipulation. And this is what Jonathan Majors is doing as well. Jonathan Majors' team is also saying that the fact that she didn't tell her friends about the physical altercation is strange, when in fact it's not actually that strange. Because if you take into consideration the charges of her being in an abusive relationship, that's what women in abusive relationships do. They don't tell anyone. That's pretty normal. That's in full alignment with the charges. But then it's being used against her to basically say that she's lying, when that is the way that women in abusive relationships behave. So they're not taking into account the dynamics of an abusive relationship when they're putting forth their case. This in itself is criminal. This in itself is criminal and has to stop. They also show clips of him walking away from her outside of the club as though it's some sort of evidence that he's, not wanting anything to do with the situation, when it is very common for the abuser to reject the person that they've assaulted directly after assaulting them. It's very common for them to be dismissive, not want anything to do with you and that sort of thing, because they need to turn the tables and make you feel as though it's your fault so that you will stay with them. It's like one of the most common tactics that they use. They do one of two things after physically assaulting you. They either beg and plead and say they're sorry and, do the whole, trauma in my past routine, or they do this, which is it's your fault, and they totally reject you, which is triggering to the victim. Those are the most common things that they do after physically assaulting you. So that recording of him dismissing her doesn't mean anything. Now we actually have more evidence that indicates that Jonathan has been physically abusive towards Grace via text conversations between the two of them. Check it out.
In text messages between Jonathan Majors and accuser Grace Jabari, the Marvel actor appears to admit physical violence. I fear you have no perspective of what could happen if you go to the hospital. Majors, 34, texted Jabari, who was 30, in September 2022. They will ask you questions. And as I don't think you actually protect us, it could lead to investigation, even if you do lie.
Now, what he does here, as I don't think you actually protect us, this type of language is important because what he's actually doing is using the them against the world type scenario that a lot of abusers and toxics and narcissists use. They make you feel as though it's you and them against the entire world, and you've got this special bond that you need to protect. This is what he's doing right now, even though the text information indicates that he physically assaulted her. So even with that, even though he physically assaulted her, it's her responsibility to protect them as a unit. This is an abuse tactic.
And the text messages displayed to the jury and read into the record by Jabari on her fourth and final day on the stand on Friday, Jabari had assured Majors that she would not blame him for causing an injury to her head. I will tell the doctors I bumped my head. Jabari cried. She wasn't able to continue, so the assistant district attorney, Kelly Galloway, took over. I will tell the doctor I bumped my head if I go. I'm going to give it one more day, but if I can't sleep and I need some stronger painkillers, that's all. Why would I tell them what really happened when it's clear that I want to be with you?
Now, these text messages are connected to an earlier incident about 6 months prior and was actually part of the evidence sealed by the court. So if the 6 to 7 women in evidence hasn't been sealed, we know for a fact that this information right here was sealed based on the argument that he is on trial for this specific incident, not the one 6 months prior. Now, in normal court cases, that might be a valid point, but in domestic violence, this is important, vital information. It indicates a pattern of abuse, and in order to identify abuse, you need to identify that pattern. So taking that pattern out is like tying her hands behind her back and telling her to fight. This is actually so important, in fact, that the police service had to change their procedures when it came to domestic violence cases. Originally, they would just take it on a case-by-case basis, but then they found out that they were often arresting the wrong person, like often arresting the victim because of the lack of information. So as a result, they had to then start recording each event so that then they had a log, a history of that person's situation. And as a result, are able to make a more informed decision about who was the perpetrator and who was the victim. So the fact that they took it out in a court case about domestic violence is outrageous. Outrageous. I can't even express that to you enough. But that's not all. Listen to how this sealed information ended up becoming part of the case. Listen to this.
So on a cross-examination earlier this week, Priya Chaudhry, one of Major's defense attorneys, had drilled Jabari about why the morning after the alleged March 2023 incident, the woman had told emergency personnel that she did not remember how she had become injured. Gaffey said Friday morning that Chaudhry had asked questions in an effort to impugn Jabari's credibility, even though they knew there might be another reason she was not forthcoming.
Okay, so if that wasn't clear, what actually happened there was Jonathan's team drilled Jabari about why she hadn't said anything and been honest about the injuries prior, knowing full and well that she couldn't properly defend herself because the evidence that would support what she actually did was sealed. And they did this in order to make her seem or appear to the jury as though she's lying. to basically discredit her. And as a result, the judge basically, thank God, stepped in and said, wait, no, we're not doing this today. Unsealed that information. That is how it got into evidence, because Jonathan's team tried to further manipulate the situation by using the fact that the information she needed to defend herself could not be used in court. Disgusting, absolutely disgusting behavior. So are we seeing now what is actually happening in this case? It's not about justice. It's not about right and wrong, who's the victim and who. Look at how they're manipulating the situation in order to get him off. But that's not all. That is not the only thing that is apparent in this text message. He also goes on to threaten suicide. Listen to this.
So in those September of 2022 text messages, Majors had responded to Jabari threatening taking his life if his then girlfriend went to the hospital for her injured head. So last night,
which is emotional abuse and manipulation, by the way, just in case you didn't note that. So he's saying basically, if you go to the hospital about your injuries, which it implies that he caused, I'm gonna basically commit suicide, which is even more of an emotionally abusive tactic if you consider that Jabari's ex-boyfriend in high school actually committed suicide. So we got a double whammy there. She cares about him, but then she's also experienced a situation where another ex actually did the deed. Let's go on.
I'm going to change the wording of this just because of YouTube. So last night I considered versus coming home. Majors wrote to Jabari adding, I need love too, or maybe I'm such a monster and horrible man, I don't deserve it, and I should. In this way, my existence is miserable, I want, says. Jabari, who in court was turned in the direction of the projected text messages, had responded, I will not go to the doctor if you don't feel safe with me doing so, or don't trust me to. I promise you I would never mention you, but understand your fear. Telling her that she could not reject his love and admonishing her for not hugging him after the alleged fight, Majors noted by text, I will probably kill myself if it's not really contemplating anymore. He added, I'm a monster, a horrible man, not capable of love. I'm killing myself soon.
Right. So here we're hearing him emotionally abuse her through the threat of suicide, then also drawing her back in by the exploited empathy tactic, right? I'm a bad person. I'm so hated. So that she comes forward and says, no, you're not, and comes forward and comforts him. He says that she's wrong for not hugging him after the fight. Maybe she didn't feel like hugging him because she just got hit upside her head. Just a thought, right? So he's not taking into consideration her emotions around that fight at all. Apparently, she's just got to do what she's supposed to do and emotionally support him, even though it implies that he has actually been physically aggressive towards her. Even though she's doing everything she can to defend him in this situation, even to the point of neglecting her own physical health to support him. Because let's face it, a head injury is nothing to joke about. She could have literally fallen into a coma. That's what we're talking about here, guys. But he's advising her not to go, and threatening suicide, emotional abuse, and then giving the guilt card and the exploitation of empathy to get her to feel sorry for him, to treat him like he's the victim. Are you kidding me right now? This guy's so guilty, so guilty. Just the conversation they're having in these messages is abusive on so many levels. At this point, how can this then be flipped into her being the primary abuser and aggressor in this situation? How? How is this even possible? The guy's guilty. So guilty right now. And okay, we don't have the evidence that he was physically abusive or physically assaulted her in this specific incident. But let's face it, the theory that she is the abuser and he is the victim doesn't hold any water, especially with this new evidence. It doesn't hold any weight whatsoever. We got indications of physical abuse. We have actual evidence of emotional abuse from him. And apparently, this isn't the only time that he has threatened suicide. And let's not forget the original text messages that were sent after he was arrested. Let's remind ourselves of that too. Hang on a minute. Let's play it.
These are the text messages. This is her texting him. Please let me know you're okay when you get this. They assured me that you won't be charged. They said they had to arrest you as a protocol when they saw the injuries on me and knew that we had a fight. I'm so sorry that they did, and I'm sorry you're in this position. We'll make sure nothing happens about this. I told them it was my fault for trying to grab your phone. I only just got out of the hospital. Just call me when you're out. I love you. Okay. So the second text message says, they just called again to check on me, and I reiterated how this was not an attack and they do not have my blessing on any charges being placed. I read the paper they gave me about strangulation and said point blank, this does not occur and should be removed immediately. The judge is definitely going to be told this. She assured this to me. I know you have the best team and there's nothing to worry about. I just want you to know that I'm doing all I can on my end. I also said to tell the judge to know that the origin of the call was to do with me collapsing and passing out and your worry as my partner due to our communication prior out of care. She promised all will be relayed. So
this is a text message that she sent after he was arrested, and you can literally hear her defending him, saying it's her fault that she got the physical injury. And unless she literally hit herself, that is not the case, right? So in that, she's implying he hit her. She's basically relaying to him the different ways that she tried to protect him from being arrested. It was her fault. You know, she took full responsibility, as victims do, about these things. And that Jonathan was just being a concerned boyfriend by calling the police when she collapsed. To me, it's very clear that this guy is guilty. Whether he is found innocent or not, because let's face it, like the guy said at the beginning, it's just what will be shown to the jury. And the jury cannot make an informed decision about the situation without all the evidence, which isn't actually being presented to them. So we don't know whether he's going to be found guilty or innocent at all. We can't trust the justice system to make an informed decision when they're not given the information in order to make that informed decision. I think that the court system, when it comes to these kinds of situations, it's just disgusting. So what's the answer? The answer, as far as I can see, would be that we need more trauma-informed, DV-aware courtrooms when it comes to abuse cases, because these abusers are using the cracks in the system to manipulate the court system and get away with abuse. This needs to stop. In my opinion, he is absolutely guilty at this point. Whether he will be found so is another story. But I just wanted to get on here and have this conversation with you because I was just literally outraged by what I was seeing happening in the courts that no one is really talking about. They're kind of like, oh, a big win for Majors because information isn't being given to the jury that's actually important. Like, what are we doing here? What are we supporting? It's disgusting. But anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and hit that bell so you get a notification every time I upload a new video. And until the next time, live boldly, live empowered, live from the inside out. Bye for now.